back around, let's say, 1970 when I was there, or again 1980ish, you're in a long queue waiting to get into some event. And some Japanese will see this foreigner who's about 100th in the queue, and they'll come and grab your arm without saying anything, because they probably don't speak English. And they just kind of drag you up to the front, forcibly. And you say, what? Nice Sendai. What are you doing? And you get up there, and they make you jump the queue.
Really?
You know, and they, all these Japanese say, yeah, it's a gaijin, it's a foreigner, come on.
So everybody's happy with that?
I don't know, because whoever made it happen thought it was the right thing to do, and some of the other people probably thought, yeah, what the hell, it's only one or two of them. But in England, that would be illegal.
No. Yeah.
They wouldn't jump on you, but they'd be mumbling, there's a queue here. The Japanese queue, they also believe in queuing, but there are certain ways you jump the queue. So that was kind of weird and embarrassing, but beneficial sometimes. And I got onto that because of some other event. Even doing that LP was because of stuff like that. Oh yeah, my teacher then, he was about to make his second album for Columbia. He wasn't a great high-level folk singer, but good enough. Serious professional. But they knew he had this foreign student, and they thought, oh well, that's cool, we've got to put him on there. So they decided to put me and Gina singing on the A side, and him on the B side, which was already, I thought, kind of cruel. But at least on the front, they put the names Yoshio Tanaka and David Hughes in both Japanese and English script. And Minyo plus Minyo, meaning folk song and folk song, one in Japanese characters and one in Western romanization. So, they're mixing the cultures. The photo on the cover had me in my traditional, which I hate, Japanese formal dress that you wear for certain kinds of concerts, even for folk song, and my teacher and his accompanying me on the shamisen, the 3-string plucked lute. He's behind me on the stage. The camera is nearer to me. I'm about twice his size in that picture. Well, they sent the album out to us. By then I had moved up to London, and he was back in Osaka, not London, what's that place called? Tokyo. He was in Osaka, 3 hours apart on the fast train. He called me up. The album had arrived. He said, did you get the album? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, what did you think? I said, oh, it seems nice, yeah. Did you see the cover picture? I said, well, yeah. Well, what do you think? I said, oh, yeah, well, it's nice. And he said, you're kind of big, aren't you? I said, oh, suddenly I realized the problem here, that Columbia thought this record would sell really well because, again, it was this weird foreigner. And there weren't any others. And at the time they had a launch party in Tokyo, where we had to do a concert with some guest artists from Columbia Records, other folkies who were professional recording artists. And during the interval we sat behind a table, me and my teacher, and with the albums there, and the Columbia guy was yelling out in Japanese, please buy David Hughes' album. Oh. And my teacher at one point whispered, and Tanaka Yoshio's album. That's him, he said, why weren't they mentioning him? That was so embarrassing, But it did tell you something about that world of folk song, and about the fact that he was not famous.
Yeah.
So put it together.
So what was it like recording it? How long did it take to record?
Well, we did it all in one day at a theater in West Tokyo, and let's see. The album. Oh, they also wanted to heighten the foreigner thing. If I had other gaijin friends who could do Japanese folk song somehow, it'd be great to have them on there too. So what we finally did, I did 8 tracks, 6 I sang, 2 Gina sang. 2 of my friends who have ever since been major they're American, but major professional musicians, and one's a music lecturer at a university in Japan. They played the shakuhachi bamboo flute, and one of them played the side-blown flute. 2 of my Western friends played the shamisen, another one played some drums. So I think I had 5 foreigners, and 3 of them are still very high-flying in that music world. By chance, at the time they weren't. We were all kind of the first generation, really, this was around 1980. We were all at Tokyo University of the Arts together. And since then, there are so many other foreigners, it'd be so easy to find people like this. So they backed me up, and I wanted to have some variety. I forget who made these decisions. I sang one Irish folk song, because some Japanese folkie had said to me, one of the other singers I knew well, your Western folk songs are so boring. There's no ornamentation. And he sang, "You take the high road, I take the low road. I get to Scotorando." And he says, our Japanese song is, "Ha," and he wiggles, you see. I said, "Oh yeah, but there are Western songs that have that." And I got this Irish song that I learned from, and sang it with shakuhachi accompaniment. One of my gaijin friends played the shakuhachi, you know. With my dog and gun through the blooming heather. Nice, no beat to it, a lot of wiggles. The Japanese guy told me later, but you know, the problem is there's too many lyrics. The syllables are too fast. Our songs have ornamentation, the ones he's thinking about anyway, and then, you know, you really spread out. It's like, ha, kyo, na. That's the equivalent of "with my dog and gun." Okay, you're already 5 syllables. That's enough. So, my God. And I put one American song, the cuckoo, that I played on the shamisen, using it like a banjo. And played the banjo part on the shamisen and translated one verse into Japanese. I had a lot of fun with that too, you know. Did it sell? Nah, I don't know, because we didn't get royalties. They gave us a flat fee, and I didn't care. I doubt if it sold. And at the launch party, the head of Columbia Records over there said to me, "You know, this should really sell well in the United States." And I said, "Well, what do you mean? Why would that be the case?" He said, "Well, because you're an American." I said, "Well, yeah, but this is an album of Japanese folk song, first of all, with most of the notes in Japanese, except for my CV that I put in, and you've kind of forgotten that I'm not very good at this. What American who was interested in Japanese folk song would buy an album that is half sung by a foreigner who can't sing the stuff very well?" And he kind of suddenly blanched and said, "Wow, I never thought of that." So anyway, a lot of interesting memories there, but all the ones I'm talking about right now seem to deal with what it's like to be a foreigner in this context. And how
Did you ever have anybody come back to you about that album at all? Is it sort of...
Well, vaguely. No, I mean, not in years later, but I don't know how long, possibly 2 or 3 years later, I walked into a folk song bar in Tokyo, and this guy got up across the way. These are places where you're all sitting on the floor drinking and eating, and there's a little stage up there where the musicians do their thing. Maybe there were 40 people in there. Guy got up and went, "Oh! Oh!" And he was drunk. He came staggering across. "Oh! Nato no LP o katta yo! I bought your LP." Oh, cool. Domo domo.
Thank you.
You know, and that's the last I heard. We went around. They wanted us to try and sell some. My teacher, part of the deal was he would automatically buy, I don't know how many, possibly 300 copies. Well, he had over 300 students paying him, so they probably all had to buy them anyway. So maybe it was 3,000 for all I know. And we went around 3 or 4 different folk song bars to perform and to show the records. And one place, I had a shakuhachi with me that I played with, bamboo flute. No, he had one, that's right. The shakuhachi guy said, "Can you autograph my instrument?" And this is like ridiculous. This instrument could have been worth, you know, like minimum 500 pounds. And he wanted me to write my name on it with a magic marker. And I thought, oh, okay, that's how weird it was to be a foreigner, that folk world. So, of course, I had to. Another person wanted me to autograph their T-shirt that they were wearing. And we sold a few albums. I don't know. Again, you know, it's
What was your flat fee? Do you remember what your flat fee was?
Oh no, I don't know. It wasn't significant.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't care.
Yeah.
Of course, we did it all in one afternoon. By the way, beside the foreigners, they had my teacher and his standard shakuhachi accompanist from Osaka. We were all in Tokyo, but they came up. 3 of his students who were kind of good backup singers for the stuff that he would do. The taiko people. This is a kind of a fun story, and this video could go on forever. But by the time I was into this world in 1977, it used to be that the folkies would go around, if they were doing tours, like almost busking musicians, anyone could play the drum to accompany folk song. It's not fancy what we have now, the on-stage super taiko groups. It's not that hard to fake it, depending on the piece. So people would take turns doing it, and I went on a tour. We were forced to go on a tour of northern Japan that was very much like the old ones, and we all took turns doing this and that. That was fun. But on the album, by then there were professional taiko and percussion players. Some would play a little hand gong, and so they had a father and son couple with professional names. That's kind you get from doing judo and things as well, or flower arranging. The folk world has had this for some time now as well. You study with your teacher for enough years, you pay him fees, take a few internal exams that he gives you on ability, and then he'll give you a professional name that is partly his. Gina got one from her flute teacher. He was Tosha Keiho. She is Tosha Keiho. She has a plaque with this on it. She had to pay him a lot of money to get this. That's how they make money. And she hadn't studied with him very long, but again, she's his only foreign student, and she tried to tell him, you know, you have all these Japanese students who've been with you for years who are better than I am, and you haven't given them professional names yet. It's very awkward to say this kind of thing to a Japanese teacher. You have to be very careful. And he said, I'm the teacher. I decide this stuff. But and then she finally said, but I'm also, you know, I'm a student and I can't afford to, whatever, at the time, the equivalent today would have been like, you know, £1,500.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, yeah, okay, well, tell you what, my father is my teacher, and part of this fee has to go on to him. So I will not collect the fee that I would get. You just have to pay my father's fee. And she couldn't refuse finally. So we have that plaque somewhere, you know. I just stayed out of that. I told my first teacher at this folk song bar, well, I'm a PhD student, and I lied, and I said, my supervisor told me I can't study with just one teacher, which is what you're supposed to do in Japan. I must study with many teachers so I can write a good thesis about the world of folk song. And he was resistant, but he finally accepted, and there were a few mini disasters that happened afterwards as I studied with other people, but never mind those. And anyway, so going back to this album, I never know where I'm burbling on these days. Percussionists by now were professionals, and they had professional names. And father, son, the daughter, father, daughter. The daughter was about 17 then. Well, about 3 years ago, 4 young Japanese folkies were brought over to England. Durham University had money and they wanted me to bring some folkies over, so I contacted these ones I knew who were young and cheap, but great. And they came over, and we performed up in Durham first, and then London and various places. Brought them over to the house one day, and the album was there. I showed him the album, and the 20-year-old shakuhachi guy said, "That's my mother." And he's looking at the picture on the back, which has all of us musicians, all the foreigners, all the Japanese, about 18 of us. And, what do you mean, it's your mother? Yeah, the taiko player. Wow, Narukoma is your mother? But your name is Sato, and she was Minami. And besides now, her father, Minami Komasaburo, has changed his name to Biho. The art name has changed because he went independent from his teacher. And so, but you're Sato. Well, yeah, because she married my dad, who's a shakuhachi player. Okay, and his name is Sato. Okay, good. Wow, and that's my granddad, because he was on the... Woo. And so, and a little time passed, and then we figured out his father had been performing at SOAS about 5 years earlier with a traveling shamisen player from Japan, a folkie. I'd arranged that gig. I had no idea they were related. Daddy was famous too, and I didn't know he'd married the young gal who'd played the taiko. Last November, I was back in Japan for I was there teaching, but there was the annual contest of what we translate as the Japan Folk Song Association, 4-day event. And all 3 generations were there. The granddad, now 85, who'd been on our album, who remembered it well and asked me how my teacher was these days, and the daughter and her husband, who I had met at SOAS, and the son. And I got a lot of photos of all of them, you know, it was really... But they kept changing their names artistically, that's the problem. You got your professional one, your real name. It's such a complicated world, yeah.